Looks like it's just about that time, so let's go ahead and get started. Just a few housekeeping items for everyone out there. You are muted and your video is disabled. The Q&A and the chat are live, so please feel free to submit any questions you have. Hopefully we'll have some time to answer them for you today, but otherwise I will share those questions with the panelists and we will get replies back to you. And also we are recording this webinar, so we have the ability to share it with all of you after the fact, and it will also live on mortarr.com. And lastly, too, before we go ahead and start with our panelists, I want to recommend that once we start showing our videos, that everybody change their view here on Zoom to the grid view. That will be just an easier way to see everybody as they speak, so we can look like, just a little screen of, from Brady Bunch. So perfect. All right, so panelists, if you want to go ahead and start your video and unmute yourself. Great. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsey Rogers, and I'm Mortarr's community manager. I'm also a customer success manager at Mortarr as well. And happy Earth Day. What a perfect day to be hosting this webinar with all of you. For everybody out there, today we're joined by 3 commercial construction and design professionals who prioritize sustainability in their day-to-day work, but in very different ways. So I'm so excited to talk to them about what sparked their commitment, what their commitment to sustainability actually looks like, and what they see in the future of sustainability within this industry. So welcome again to the panelists. I would love to have each of you just do a brief introduction about yourself and say a little bit about your role and your company. So Jessie, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me. My name is Jessie Houlihan. I'm president of Stahl Construction. I'm from Wisconsin originally and went to school to study environmental science and journalism. And I really am an intersectional person. I love looking at really deep scientific concepts and how that overlaps with how we communicate, create strategies, and sort of effectively evolve how we're living on this earth. So I worked at International Environmental Consulting. I did carbon credit development projects when I was first out of college, developing renewable energy projects in Africa and Asia, funded by countries that were in the European Union then, so France and Germany, sort of offsetting some of their carbon emissions. That's when I started working alongside lead architects and engineers and just grew fascinated with this process of built environment. It's a lot of people, process, tools, strategy, multidisciplinary, but at the end of the day, we build something that has a lasting impact. And I think that's beautiful and fascinating and a process worthy of elevation so we can really maximize that positive impact. I also worked in environmental tech, both in the facilities, hardware and SaaS software sides, like management of our facilities, before joining this company 9 years ago. Really came to help grow and evolve their focus, grew the company pretty significantly. And as a part of that, really we have mined and honed ourselves to be a value-driven organization, really focused on elevating the built environment to the benefit of all. So our clients, our communities, and the environment as well. And I'm happy to have been here going on 9 years now, running the business. And at this point, we'll be launching and diversifying some of what we're doing, really building off of that focus as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And Sam, why don't we now take it over to you to introduce yourself.
Great. Well, thanks, Lindsey. Thanks for the the invite. It's exciting to be here, especially on Green Earth Day, obviously. My background is in architecture. I'm kind of an architect in a former life, but I've been working with Kalwall Corporation. We make high-performance translucent daylighting systems, and I've been with the organization since 2014. I'm the creative director here, and I focus primarily on brand strategy, product development, and research and design. So excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And then Katie, last but not least.
Thank you so much, Lindsey, for including me. My name is Katie Taylor. I'm Director of Business Development with KFI Studios. Unlike my panelists here, I actually have not come from the furniture industry historically, so pretty new to it, but KFI as a whole We started out as really commodity furniture, seating, and we're really moving into more purposeful design, which is something you'll see repeated from us time and time again. But what that really means is starting from raw materials, we're being very purposeful in how we craft those and what we bring on, and listen a lot to what the design community is looking for in terms of sustainability as well as design. So we're excited to launch our new NeoCon showroom in October. So permanent showroom on the third floor of the Merchandise Mart. So a lot of fun design to come with that. So.
Well, thank you so much for all the introductions. One of the reasons I'm so excited for this panel today is selfishly, I want to learn more about sustainability and what can be done in this industry. So I'm not sure for anybody who registered for the webinar out there, but you might be in my place where you just want to learn more. And how did companies implement this? How did they get to where they are? So I think we really have 3 great panelists for this who can really explain, the difference between each of their specific companies and what they participate in. So thank you again for being here, panelists, and let's get started. So I have just a few questions I thought we could be a little conversational about. I know Zoom makes it hard to do that because only one person can talk at a time. So, but I'll go ahead and ask a question, and if you want, we can actually start kind of go in the same circle. Jessie, Sam, and Katie, but feel free to pipe in at any time because we want this to be a conversational and fun panel. So, all right. So first off, how has sustainability impacted the commercial construction and design industries? And how do you see that growing or changing in the future?
I think it's really interesting. I want to go to the root of how we dwell and make choices. I think fundamentally how we finance and look at projects is the important starting point. Right now, the way we finance and look at things, that purview, that window of time by which we want to see X return is really important. I'm starting to unlock these public-private partnerships that we're funding and looking at things differently, or what I call unicorn projects, unicorn investors, where we look at return and expectations a little differently is going to be key. Because right now, if we're prioritizing short-term sort of financial return, it's really difficult for us to start to make these market-setting, human-evolving decisions, because that means investing and looking at how things could be a little bit differently, and sometimes spending a little bit more money up front in study or in material or in quality for that longer-term resilience, adaptability, opportunity there. So I think fundamentally, as humans and our consumer choices, we should all be looking at how we make our choices, what we're supporting, the brands we're supporting. I think fundamentally our consumption model of we are consistent consumers, and waste generation is absolutely paramount, as well as what we invest in, the buildings we go to, et cetera. I'm starting to push that conversation and thinking. Our market is creating some really beautiful standards have come out for us to start to think about and look at impact of our work through a couple different lenses. And I think those are helpful when people start to think about them, and in our market create shared language, shared understanding about what we can do. But most projects aren't going to be certified in one of those sort of high performance categories. So I think our market needs to blend looking at how do we study, understand, invest in these market setting, evolving sort of projects, as well as look at everything that passes through our hands to say, how can we uplift it? How can we make it better? More local materials, more energy efficiency, tighter facade, better human health performance, better environmental performance. Where can we build in those couple of things every day? And I think we have a responsibility as humankind to have that conversation and continue to, in the rooms we get in the seats we get in, just ask the question, could that be more adaptable and more durable? Or how do we want to use that? Or are we thinking about water and just opening up that understanding and conversation again? We're at a time of a lot of human evolution, a lot of turmoil. So on this Earth Day, what a great opportunity to sort of gently invite those prompts back in. And I think we all have a role, whether we get to run our companies and make those choices or not. We get to have a role in how we show up in the work and in our lives.
Yeah, and I love what you just said there about start with asking the questions. So you have a project coming up or a new product, and as you're designing it or starting the process of it, ask that question, how can we make this more sustainable? And maybe that's a great starting point for some people. I
think sustainable is a good word. And then I think even getting at the roots of what the values are of the project. Do we want people to thrive in this space? Should we make it healthy? Should we have plants cleaning the air? Should we have access to water that wakes something up in people? Sustainability is an interesting word, and I hope we keep growing from there too, because sustain means that we can exist as is, but in our consumption model, it doesn't work. So we have to shift generative thinking where like 1 + 1 + 1 = 33, not 3. Like our ideas and our power together need to be more. We need to be regenerative at this point. So I think for us to do that, that does mean we all need to talk about what are our values, what are we trying to accomplish through the work at hand, and how can we uplift for the benefit of more than just financial short-term performance.
That was an interesting point there, because I'm looking at you in construction. So you guys are, building the structures that people are looking to dwell in. And then we come in furniture later, but more and more you're hearing people say, okay, well, I need my furniture to be held to the same standards as what I'm digging into the earth to build. So what am I going to bring into my space? What am I going to add to keep the air quality clean and to make everyone that is affected and interacting with this furniture to be able to have that same green touch point. So it's so interesting to think of how it really does all just blend together, from the idea of building this space to what are we going to fill it with and how are we going to interact with it. So really cool.
Building it, it's about what products are you going to use to put it together, but then also fill the space like you said. So that's why I think we have such an interesting panel, because you wouldn't primarily really be working together, but you're all kind of working on a same project together. Yeah. So I thought that would be such an interesting panel. And then Sam, question goes over to you. Sustainability, how has it impacted this industry, and how do you see it growing or changing in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a sea change really in the last 20, 25 years. I think about going to architecture school, and at the time it was a great program, still is, but you had to go to the human ecology college to take classes on sustainability. Of course, they were teaching tried and true methods like proper site planning and passive strategies, but it really was even then an emerging kind of field. This is the late 90s. And I went back and looked, and I was surprised that the US Green Building Council was founded in also the mid 90s. I think the first green build was in the early 2000s. And at the time, I think there was this feeling that sustainable goals were just one of many things that had to be considered, kind of nice to have. Whereas I think the paradigm shift now is the recognition that every decision that you make has implications in terms of your footprint and what it means more broadly. And I think that's been a really important shift. And again, I think that it's sort of happened in many directions. I think it's been owner-driven. I think it's been designer specifier-driven architectural and engineering communities. But I also think that building product manufacturers have really embraced it, some more than others. And we've been fortunate because our sort of product concept has always been a good fit for these types of projects. But even more than that, it's how do we take what we think is already a good product? And again, we're primarily concerned with that high performance building envelope so that you can reduce your energy load. And as a daylighting company, preaching offsetting artificial lighting usage for a variety of reasons. Again, I think it's an easier and easier sell, and it's a more and more kind of mainstream consideration, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Anything else to add with that? We have such great topics being brought up here. Great feedback.
I think that what Sam does is really neat. When we talk about sustainability and we talk about the environment, I also like to make the link that like we are human animals living on this beautiful planet, held by this earth, and it's this amazing, beautiful thing actually. We want to be healthy human animals too, not just be positive for the environment. So like work like Sam's company and creating access to daylight and what that means for our brains and beings, being in alignment with the sun's movement. That's beautiful too. So I love adding that angle too as we think about this like planet and also us as a part of it, our health and well-being in space.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, Jessie, I think you alluded to it, but that idea of like, again, not only more emphasis on sustainability or environmental impact, but more human-centered design. I'm so glad that that's become a much more mainstream concept because again, buildings are for people. We spend so much time in the built environment that, there's obviously the environmental implications of the built environment, and those are super important. But in terms of what it does for our health and wellness and productivity and so many other things, a well-designed space and a well-conceived building can make a tremendous difference in day-to-day life. And ultimately, I think the built environment is meant to support the activities that we all participate in. So it's been a good shift to see that as well.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you for that. So Another question is, why did your company choose to pursue sustainability certifications for your projects or, for instance, for your products? Was it an ask from clients or an internal decision? Sam, you had kind of mentioned that before, kind of what's driving that shift. You said that, in the 90s, this wasn't really something that was as prevalent as it is right now. So for each of you, what really what made you choose to kind of shift your business into that direction? Jessie?
So, I mean, as a company, we're a commercial construction company now. I'm working in some small scale development and consulting as well. So we are not certified. We have LEED certified professionals here. But with our projects that we get certified, I think certification has a role in the marketplace to sort of set the standard and understanding of that impact. And we just celebrated our very first certified Living Building Challenge project. There's only 26 in the world. So we're really, really proud that that standard actually, without the expectations of that standard, we never would have reached the limits of, reaching into supply chain to the degree that we did. So it marks and means something, and it stands for something in development of this work that we're doing. But other projects, it's simply a marketing thing. An investor or client wants a LEED certified building. They think that a LEED certified hotel, et cetera, will outcompete competition, both either in reaching consumers or in their own long-term operational management, maintenance, less cost sort of expectations there. So it's typically a consumer, LEED certification is often about reaching that consumer a little bit more. LBC is like reaching for a standard, these like WELL standards are a little bit different. And WELL too, sometimes people want that certification, it's like healthy space for their employee base. So they want to invest in that and have something be that, put that out there so their team knows this matters to us, your health and well-being, how you feel in space, et cetera.
Sam? Anything?
Yeah, it's been an interesting thing because, again, we typically are, a product that is part of a much bigger project. And so, we obviously want to support our customers' goals. And in many cases, those are, hopefully aligned, but they're always a little different. So what the owner's priorities, the architect's priorities, the contractors, and, we try to strike that balance. And we've also, again, I think at this point, we've been on over 1,000, maybe several, more than that, LEED certified projects. But I would say, I think there's been, and I think maybe Jessie alluded to it as well, a little bit of a shift away from like the dominance of LEED as the kind of like premier methodology for kind of quantifying the sustainable, kind of characteristics of your project. And I'm so happy to see these other standards emerge. So we've spent time, for a long time, we've offered a complimentary daylight modeling program. And mainly we do that because we want to simulate a good daylighting design on the front end and partner with the designers that we're working with to develop solutions that are going to be reflected in the final outcome. But we have since been looking into, tied to the WELL standard, not only looking at photopic lux or what it takes to see, but melanopic lux and thinking about circadian light and your circadian rhythm and blue light dosing. And again, the idea that we're sort of meant to have this more regular connection to the sun and to daylight. And it really does affect a lot of our biological functions, in addition to being, something that we need for proper visual acuity. And again, the environmental impacts that if you can harness useful light, and control it, mitigate glare and solar heat gain, you really can offset a lot of your HVAC costs and artificial lighting usage. So it all kind of ties together. In terms of other types of certifications, we are just kind of starting down the path of looking into different third-party standards like Passive House certification, and really trying to wrap our brains around things like EPDs and HPDs. And again, I think around the time of LEED v4, I think it's been about 5 years or so, there were many, many different metrics, and it was difficult to sort of tease out, what is going to be the kind of accepted methodology. And again, I think at this point, we're realizing more and more that there isn't going to be a one kind of gold standard, but there are lots of different approaches to more resilient, more sustainable, more human-centered design. And we're trying to support our customers no matter which voluntary standard they're pursuing.
Thank you. And Katie, what about you guys? Why did your company choose to kind of go down this path, for your products? Was it a client need, or where'd that come from?
It's been such an interesting conversation since the day that I started with KFI. So We always had our Green Guard Gold certification. That was just something that, okay, we put this stamp on furniture as a whole. And as we've been adding new products, so we've added within the past 2 years, 13 new lines, right? We have 7 coming up over the next 365 days, which is unreal. And I'm just thinking about it, it's so crazy. But we went from getting asked so many certifications. Do you guys have this? Do you have this? And we're like, well, if we look at the ingredients of this recipe for what this chair is, how can we make sure that every component that we put in to this furniture is sustainable? So our foam that our seat pads are made out of, they're CertiPure. So nothing coming out of them is going to affect the environment in a negative way. The wood that we make our solid wood tabletops with, right? They're sustainably, grown, the trees are. So things that you start to think about that way are so wild. And we're working with Q Designs. They're Whitney Architects out of Chicago. We work with Union. The furniture designers that we're working in coordination with to get a lot of our new stuff out, they are there first. And it's been so interesting to see the different materials that they recommend. And, the PET that we're using on a lot of the things that are coming up, it's made out of recycled plastic bottles. So to be able to take those elements, but then still craft something that people are so excited to get their paws on, right, to put in their space, and to be able to say, oh, you're in this beautiful new space that I call my new office, my new home, whatever that looks like. There's a touch point for our end user even to say, I'm proud that this is sustainable. The hardware on this chair or this table, I'm able to recycle it this way. And now we have our specification PDFs that we put out there to say, this is exactly what happens to this chair when you're finished with it, which doesn't have to be for a long time, but in the instance. So we're really thinking about every single touch point into that instead of just what can I slap on here to make sure everyone knows that I'm working on it. We're really being a lot more mindful. So
yeah, it's great that you put more meaning behind what it is that you're doing. You just don't want to check boxes. You want to be able to explain to
exactly.
This is what happens in, I don't know, 20, 30 years. I don't know how long you keep a chair or something like that, but
100.
100 years.
100 years.
Down in your family. But yes, I love that you guys include that so somebody can see what happens afterwards.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, you guys. So another question I have for you is, so can you share just a little bit more about your company's commitment to sustainability and what really drives you to work this way? And feel free to kind of dip into a little bit of like a personal feeling that you have for it, or what, Jessie, you studied. Feel free to dip into that a little bit too.
Yeah, I think I'm just an impact-driven leader in general. I'm motivated by creating positive impact for other people. And that's just been who I am. So my career has been trying to harness that for maximum impact. And when we look at construction, I mean, my fascination with it from the first place was long-term impact, right? So I came to help them get back on track and be financially successful, but I stayed because there's merit in studying and unwinding these upfront processes, which are really disintegrated, to integrate them around performance and long-term thinking, goal-based thinking. So we do that, we play with that process to the benefit of our clients, but we also want to tinker with that process to the benefit of others. So really for us, as we grew, really started to focus on what our core values were. We are a traction company. I love that methodology. Just clarity throughout the organization, lots of good Patrick Lencioni business thinking sort of applied across the organization. And one piece of that is core values is the one thing you will absolutely have in common, everybody here. We all have different skill sets and strengths, but those core values are what unites us here. And one of those core values that really emerged became legacy. And just understanding, it used to be, we used to talk about the interrelated nature of our work, that our choices affect other people affect us. There's this big sort of web of work that we get things done through. But we started to take it back and to say, really, it's about legacy for us. And what are those categories that we want to affect? And for full transparency, we've been working on that. We've been studying it. We're not there, right? I think we're still at crawl phase, like really understanding the different pieces of the work that we can do. Because it's everything from running a business where people can thrive here and be their whole selves, like my employee base is healthy, all the way down to, what's our workforce, boots on the ground, on site, are they diverse? We look at human impact like that. How are we affecting targeted owned businesses and ensuring that they succeed? and mentorship along those lines, all the way to materials. Can we reuse materials and affect our supply chain? Can we be looking at recycled materials? Can we be, we're studying right now whether we want to have a reclaimed materials library where we have demolition contractors that work directly for us. We have a self-performance division, laborers. So we want to train them on how to remove things that could get reused and potentially store and work with architects around affecting that supply chain in. So it's all about, for us, regenerative resiliency, that big picture is we're not existing in a way that works long-term. And then what is the point of our work if it's not going to be for the benefit of my babies, the future babies, my community? I don't want another 20-year building out there that's going to need to be knocked down and rebuilt. I want to make smart choices with the material resources on this earth. And I personally want to have an impact on helping people uplift and be well within themselves, find their work, find purpose and passion. And I believe we feel better, we do better together. High tide rises all ships. So to see my team wake up into that legacy piece of core value is the only way that we're actually, my passion alone isn't going to get anybody anywhere. I need us all to work together on that. And that's become really a shared value across the organization, studying with each piece of our work, how do we progress that thinking? And sometimes it's just treating people respectfully and starting to have the conversation and open up to understanding. Or it's projects like the LBC project where subcontractors and material providers are as linked to that success as we are. And so we need to literally reach into those supply chains, into those companies to understand components of what's going into it and their process and shipping. And it's really interesting to see, it's almost like evangelism. My team that worked on that LBC project, that superintendent, by the end of the day, it's he was so proud that it was a zero waste construction project. He was taking his little cart full of garbage to go put into a wall as insulation up the street, and not even via his car. He would walk it downtown. So there was no greenhouse gas emissions emitted in the process. So it's people, we want to matter. And that is a real heartfelt reason to show up in the work, not just to build and make someone else money, but to affect something. So it's become a real a fabric of the organization at this point, and something, as we lean further into our work, we're certainly going to be launching more things, more offsets from the existing brand. And a lot of that's going to be focused on consultancy in this space, as well as foundation, impact donation in this space too.
Oh, that's great that you mentioned consultancy too, because that was a question I personally had, is for a company who, wants to start going down this path of, being better to our environment. If they don't know where to turn to, there are consultants out there that you can bring in to help you evaluate. That was a personal question that I had, because how do you know where to start? How do you know what things you can do?
I think we need to have an impact ranking system globally. If you go to the store and you're picking your shampoo, I think there should be an impact ranked element that you understand what went into it, environmental, sociologically, all of it. So I can say this is good for humans or planet on a ranking scale. I can see -10 to -20 to +20. Think if you were going to travel to a city and I want to go to East Asia, and you kind of look and you're I can see its impact ranked, that this city treats their people better, has better cycles, does with their waste better, their water better, right? I think right now there's a lack of transparency of understanding a lot of our choices, which is interesting. So we're all doing our best with what's marketed to us and what's kind of going on, and trying to make fundamentally good decisions. There are smart people out there, whether it's your home life, considering that cycle, all the way to your business. There are people who deeply understand this work. And I came from this work, frankly, so I love it, but I didn't stay focused, just hyper focused on just consultancy in this space. So I have people I call in to help me understand, this piece. If I'm going to make a decision around reused metal framing versus low flow water, if I can afford to do one thing, help me understand, what's going to have the biggest impact here. So I work with people on that within our organization. I have recommendations of people, but some of it is market specific, your product, or regionally specific. But I highly recommend going and bringing in advice, expertise, if it's not something that is housed internally. And there's a wealth of resources online as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessie. So Sam, same question to you. Kalwall's commitment to sustainability, and what really drives you to work that way?
Yeah. We've been around since 1955, if you can believe that. And really our founder's vision and the original product concept is still what guides us. And as I mentioned, that vision was for a higher performance, let's say, than kind of typical commercial glazing, in most cases vision glazing, but with much better quality daylighting, better insulation factors, and so forth. And this was something that he thought was just sort of an obvious, practical, technically achievable wish. And basically, as Jessie said, this idea of evangelizing, I mean, that's sort of what we do. That's our promotional and our sales strategy, is to go out and educate people on the difference, but how to daylight properly. And again, we think glass is wonderful for connection to the outdoors, the kind of concern for biophilia, and humans need that sort of visual connection. But we also believe that there's way too much usage of glass just to bring in, let's say, quantity of daylight as opposed to quality of daylight. And again, I think that there is a process of having to educate people because there's so many different considerations, and Katie and myself, we focus on kind of one component of deliverable to a finished product or project. Whereas Jessie, you really have to think about everything. And I'm curious to know too, like, do clients approach you? Because obviously your sort of philosophy is a lot different than other contractors. So like, how do you find other stakeholders who want to pursue projects along the same sort of set of goals and priorities that you do? I think that's really interesting, because in our case, they sort of come to us, and maybe that's the case for you as well, but they don't come to us without a lot of education and collaboration, essentially.
It's a mix. I build schools, I build hotels. We're known for some of our sort of sector experience, and we're known for our front end work, our ability, we're really focused on lean execution. I feel like this is a backdrop that even as we as a leadership team continue to hone in and go deeper on our shared mission, and actually we just reinvented our 10-year target, and the 10-year target is like all my hopes and dreams combined. It's like it's not, it's growing, right? So I don't think that that's all of what we're known for. It's just been a piece of what we're pushing for, but it's becoming, my bigger vision is that any work kind of funneled through our organization would be better for community, environment, and people. That automatically, even fully designed buildings, we'd be looking for those water, energy, human, earth opportunities. And right now, that's not the case. So we're still getting some design things, and we're still just tinkering at understanding. I want to, and with these sort of advanced, my unicorn projects, certainly want to be known for it. And part of it's demographic of where you're at. Here in Minneapolis and Minnesota, we are value aligned with the broader market, but we're forward thinking. We're not where our competition is, good, bad, or otherwise. You go to other markets where it's a different conversation. I just got back from San Francisco. Number of people that I was meeting with, spending time with, their own businesses involved in our space. And it's like, they're 10 minutes into hearing what we do, and they're like, oh, hell yeah. Here's where you need to go. Here's what you need to talk to. Here's who's investing in it, studying it. So some of it's just, finding the right sort of soil for us to grow into, keep practicing in our home environment here, but keep finding those opportunities to go and grow with the work and with the mission too. So I think we'll get more and more people then that are finding and interacting with us because of that work and that space in the years to come than we have so far.
Great. And Katie, on to you. Your company's commitment to sustainability and what really drives your company and you to work that way.
When you had first asked, I was kind of thinking one way, but after listening to Sam and Jessie, I'm thinking about kind of spinning on this idea of vulnerability and saying, we're seeking to understand. We're in this brand new path, and we used to do things this way. And we're moving towards seeking to understand how can we do better, and we're always open to asking that question for the entire process of what we do. So may that be hiring. We're in a historically underutilized business zone here in Louisville, so a lot of our employees are from our local neighborhood, which is incredible. Just think about how little it takes for them to actually get to work, and just asking our reps. So we have our reps are across the country. They're incredible soundboards for us. And the relationships that we have with them allows us to be like, what are your customers looking for? And how can we help? We are the worst. And they're probably so tired of me, but I'm like, the worst we're ever going to say is no, but just tell me how we can improve and how we can get better. And that's really our commitment to just being out in the world and being a louder company than we had been. But every single touch point to what we're putting out there is thought out. And that's the promise that we can make at this point, which is really, really exciting.
Well, and I like that you say vulnerability and transparency, because, everyone starts somewhere, and to do that, you need to be vulnerable. You're not, you don't wake up one day and you're an expert at all of these items and you're going to implement them and, get it done. You have to vulnerable at the beginning.
Mhm.
And then, transparency is key. Ask these questions, tell them what you're doing, have your customers and your employees trust you.
Yeah. And like everyone that has signed up and listening today, it's like, I'm here because I want to know how to do better. And
Right.
that's the best you can, like, you're doing the best. Everyone's doing the best they can, right?
Yep, that's why I'm here today. Personal
Same.
questions. I want to know.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much for that. Okay, so next question. So talk us through a sustainable project or product that your team has implemented or that you're currently working on. And Jessie, before you get started, somebody actually in the Q&A was really curious to know how you got involved with the Living Building Project. They're just curious to know how that started for you guys.
Yeah, why don't I use that one then? So the architect, I call it my pace setters in life in general. I look for pace setters. At first, I was looking for mentors, but there weren't enough that looked or sounded like me or felt like I was not finding mentorship that fit the mold. So I started looking for what I call pace setters, like other people out there fighting to do and figure things out. And press the work, press the mission, press themselves to be the best leaders they can be. And of those people that I found of my community, this architecture firm is one of them. A firm I found that's sort of legacy grown from good values, good quality work, high design, wants to be efficient, focused on sort of value driven work as well. And so we found synergy there first. And us and that firm were involved in a different development that we are investors and co-developers in. That's a mixed income, mixed use, transit oriented development, LEED certified project. We have waste to energy on site, urban forest, really focused on like, how do we create live, work retail space? How do we change, sort of test some of this thinking about how humans are dwelling. So we got to know each other there in like a really deep trust exercise, co-producing together as a team. It's actually an integrated project delivery project. The trust and transparency we built there is definitely part of how we ended up getting to embark on this subsequent adventure together. I'm sitting in my beautiful office space, adaptive reuse, historic warehouse. We hired that architecture firm to come design our space, really focused on human health, wellness, collaborative work, open, lots of daylighting. So they came and worked with us on that, working with really healthy human materials. And then we were invited to pursue their build out office project downtown Minneapolis, which was intending to be an LBC project. Now I had been already on that IFLI trade. I think that this standard is one of the highest and hardest to make. So it's really hard to find a project where someone's willing to fund and want to do it, but I'd been studying the subcomponents for a while, as had the lead architect from that firm. So we interviewed, had the resonance that came from years of trust in sort of work together, and then embarked as a really open-ended project. Actually, it was a cost plus project. So we worked with them directly around what they wanted, what that meant, reusing materials in their space. We were able to reclaim marble from a project we were doing, a Michelangelo sculpture grade marble from the 20s that we were able to reclaim out of a different project that the developer didn't want it. Our first segue in starting to sort of collect our own things for a project. And it was just a really beautiful collaborative thing. In LBC, especially since this wasn't a ground up project, you pick a couple petals to focus on. So in those, though we can't control everything in a multi-tenant building, those petals help us focus on what we are controlling. So really healthy air quality, reuse of materials, regionally produced materials. We had art and beauty as a subcomponent. So we actually, it was a zero waste construction project. Think reusable bins for paint sort of situation. Think no tape on a box sort of situation. So every piece of materials that wasn't immediately recyclable, reusable into the supply, into the world. We had an artist come make an art installation with all of those remaining materials. It's transit-oriented development project. So there were a number of things that were just relative to where the space was, and then how, and what we're meaningfully building in the space. But there were a couple key features that I just loved. I talked about that marble. Our team, a couple of the specifics on the mechanical systems, specifically this wall that can move, were really complicated to get a vegetable-based lubricant. Some of these things that ended up being, the really complicated, interesting parts that you'd walk in and think cool feature, but not know how hard it was to get that done. really, really high air quality standards, including during construction. We had monitors to make sure there was no volatile organic compounds in the air. And I think that's fascinating too, because if you want healthy space, it goes all the way into change management with that team. Like, hey, if you wear this perfume, it's going to affect our air quality monitor, and we might not get certified. So suddenly you're talking about, people's choices coming into the space too. Is just fascinating work. And like I said, we just got certification last week. So newly sought victory there. And now with that firm, we do want to go market to and find other clients. We're going to take a little bit more geographically broad look, seeing who wants to invest in that way, and see if we can kind of go collaborate, building from our learnings there, and do some more good work together.
Wow.
That is so
Blown
fascinating.
away by all of those different components, because I have to tell you, I don't know if I would have thought about like the oil you use for that sculpture, the vegetable oil, or like the kind of perfume that somebody is, or cologne when they walk into a space, how that could affect that.
Yeah.
My
wheels are turning right now.
I'm like, you have to be so mindful in every single element of everything you do, or else you just, it's gone.
And one of their
It's just
petals was
wild.
equity, and I really like that about LBC. The Rely US GBC standard is also amazingly. Rely is focused not just on like green certification, like LEED certified, it's focused on resiliency, adaptability, and it brings in this human component that I think is really, really key, sort of missing in some of the other standards and in conversations too. I think that these things overlap. It's like we can build great space, but if the humans aren't trained, integrated, and don't know how to be healthy within it, like what good is it? And LBC really reaches into that behavioral piece too. It's interesting.
Thank you so much for that. So Sam, same question to you is, maybe it's a certain project that Kalwall was participating on, or one of your products specifically, but tell us about, what you have going on there for sustainability.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, we're sort of focused and geek out about how to create like the most perfect building envelope that can act as this mediator or filter between the interior and the exterior. And that's both, managing, light and heat, and mitigating the effects of the climate and the environment. I'm so glad that resiliency came up as a topic, because again, having developed products that can meet high windborne debris resistance as we see, bigger, more powerful storms. So, we're looking at it again from kind of for any project in any part of really the world. We sell all over the world, to create solutions that can be tailored to just about any project requirement. And again, we do so many types of projects that it's hard to really pick a favorite. And again, there are definitely some more high profile jobs. We've been on a number of AIA COTI top 10 winners, which is the Committee on the Environment. One that comes to mind is Yale Sculpture Building. Was a Kiernan Timberlake job. And again, that one sticks out to me because they were developing a custom double skin facade, and they used our panels as the interior light, using our Lumira aerogel super insulating material. And so jobs like that are just really fun, because those are people that are not only trying to implement good common sense strategies for daylighting and high performance envelopes, but are also, really trying to push the envelope, no pun intended, or maybe it is, to do even more ambitious things to try to, again, really evolve the standards for, what it means to be a wall or a window or a roof or a skylight. So, I love seeing us on any kind of job that's really pursuing those types of standards. But I think about the Dunbar High School, which is a few years old now, but I believe it's still has the most points awarded for a lead school. Things like that are wonderful, but we're fortunate to collaborate with designers and other stakeholders, but we really do try to help them achieve their goals. And again, we're just really a sort of portion of their overall consideration. But to the extent that we can collaborate on our sort of piece of the overall pie, we love to work with people that are just super passionate about pushing the envelope as far as it can be pushed.
Yeah. Well, and when you're working with somebody like that too, then it's a learning opportunity. There's so much out there to be learned, and things that we all don't know. So it's the connections that you make that help you even internally push the envelope with something that you're doing. Yeah. So, and then Katie, question over to you too.
It's the thought of pushing the envelope is so interesting, and kind of the situation I was thinking about, in that you have to open your mind to doing things that maybe historically your company doesn't do. So we have this large healthcare company locally, and they're like, we have all these old chairs. We're going to throw them away. We don't know how to recycle them. We don't know what we're going to do with them. It's also going to cost a lot of money for us to buy all new ones. And we're like, let's pump the brakes on this project, right? So we went to them, and we're sitting here internally, like, how do we help this customer that isn't necessarily buying our furniture right now, but long-term, whatever that looks like. We had our upholstery team go into all of their hospitals and reupholster every single thing that they were about ready to just chuck out the door. And so now that healthcare company is looking to us as, okay, well, they know how to do these things in a mindful way. And so those projects just keep coming up more and more, but it's like, we're not an upholstery company. That's not what we do. But to start thinking about our community and how we can all work together to create those like positive impact stories. It takes stepping away from the, your end dollar amount for the year, right? You have got to be really flexible in that. With that being said, we led last year, I guess it was 2 years ago, because 2020 was a little lost, I believe, but we helped our local IIDA chapter with the Zero Landfill project. And I think that's something that actually happens across the country. But as we're sitting here as a furniture company, and people are saying, I want to look at these textiles. I need samples of this chair, but I might not use it. I need to see what that wood actually looks like, because the color, gray might not actually be gray. It's charcoal, whatever that is. They have so many materials that go into deciding what a final project is going to look like. So locally here in Louisville, we had all of the IIDA members. We had artists come by. We had different furniture dealers, manufacturers, bring everything that they had acquired over the past year that they don't need any longer. And instead of just throwing it all away, we had those artists. We had school teachers, we had art teachers come in, and they were able to take those materials and take them home. So in the end, we saved 1,500 pounds of just waste going into the landfill. So it was a really, really cool project, but you just have to think outside your business for those types of projects too. Like in your day-to-day, you have to be in line with them, but then, you have to think out of the box to be able to get your name out there and
it's
that sort of thing.
You mentioned like those samples, because I got to tell you, I guess it didn't really pop into my mind, when you're getting these samples on different, whether it's, textile, anything like that, what are you to do with those at the end? It's so wasteful to receive that and then do anything with it. So what a great thought process with that is to put it to good use. I love that.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we are at I'm checking our time. So, okay, we're about 10 minutes to, but I want to get in just one last question. Let me see here, because I have 3, but I want to make sure I pick one that will be really good for our audience out there. And we may end up having to do like a 2.0 or something, because this is a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
So, I want to know, what recommendations do you have for people that are starting the journey of applying these practices and mindsets to their work? What kind of advice do you have to give to the people who are, like me here today, taking this as a learning opportunity? What can you say to those people?
Be really meta. Because I think that there's a lot of things we're trying to integrate and correct in the world right now. There's a lot of disconnect out there. There's a lot of polarity out there. So there's a lot that our conscious brains are trying to integrate. So I think it's great if we start with like self-acceptance and gratitude. And like for the moment we're in right now, gratitude for this beautiful earth that provides us with food and atmosphere. And it's just beautiful. So like start with that gratitude, well-being, and then start to ask questions. And I like to use lenses, because we can take lenses on and off. So like, you have your lens of how you grew up and how you see the world. You have your lens of your specific work focus. And I'm a mom. We have all these lenses for how we perceive the world. I'd start to work on adding those lenses. Like think about water, think about carbon, think about reuse, think about waste. Start with yourself and think about those things. Like Am I getting extra satisfaction for that? Can I carry a water bottle? What can I do that's reusable? Can I support a restaurant that's not doing this or is doing that, and start to consider those choices. And then when it comes to work, add that same lens. Like, can we talk about adaptability, resiliency of those materials? Can we talk about where they're coming from? Can we talk about water? Can we talk about what the community wants or needs in this space? And if we want to consider integrating that. So I would say just start with the questions, because if we get really overwhelmed with all of like the big is really overwhelming, right? So with that gratitude, like start asking questions, be curious, let yourself be well. And from that place, let's grow and evolve and figure out how we can each sort of move the needle at the tables that we're at and in the lives that we're leading.
Great. Thank you. And Sam?
Yeah, well, I'd echo all of that, but just say like in general, I think it's just really good. It's a really good timing in a way for someone who's interested in these types of things. There's just, as was mentioned, so many resources and just in general, a lot more emphasis placed on these types of projects and this way of creating spaces. So I would say, depending on what first of all, I think inclusive design is super important. I think being practical and kind of low tech and not striving for sort of overly complicated solutions to, in some cases, fairly straightforward problems. And again, they become more complex as they start to layer upon themselves. This, as was mentioned, you may have one consideration in terms of, water management, and that may come up against another consideration in terms of your, HVAC system kind of sizing and things that, but basically to try to look for the simplest, most kind of effective solutions, I think is a really important thing. And then again, to sort of think about all the different stakeholders and all the different impacts, and to really try to be inclusive from the outset of a project. It's so hard to kind of go back and sort of layer on things to correct some early bad decision making. So I would say, like, spend enough time early on really being thoughtful and kind of working through a project that, again, sort of includes all the various stakeholders, come up with, a simple, practical, hopefully elegant solution. But, think about, the environmental impact, think about the implication for people occupying the space, and also, for the greater community that are going to be affected by the choices you make within that community. So it's really good timing. It's interesting to see, of course, today, like some of these ambitious goals that the Biden administration is proposing. And again, I think a lot of the ability to pursue these kind of projects is because there's more demand. There's more of an expectation that, hey, these things are important, and people just don't accept anymore that things that we may have said in the past are, oh, that's not possible, or it's only one of many factors. I think now, especially younger generations, it's just sort of a common sense thing, and I really do think it's going to be a sort of this philosophical change, and so that this older idea that like a sustainable project has to cost more, that there's sort of like it's a struggle or a bit of a burden to pursue, I think is being replaced by this idea that, like, if you start with this kind of holistic approach from the outset, there's all sorts of other opportunities that are introduced.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I feel like this is the new way. It's no longer, oh, well, we've done it this way before. It's like, it's not even like a second thought in anyone's mind, this is the way it is now. You talk about like the newer generations coming in and kind of filling up, maybe it's these roles or, whatever their job might be, but it's, that's just the mindset now, and you mentioned Kalwall, being around since it was like some 1950 something. I'm like, within your company, there must be such an awesome evolution to where you started to where you are now. And I think it's really interesting that you have that history to kind of look back on. Yeah. So that was a thought I had. Awesome. So Katie, last but not least.
Yes, absolutely. No, you touched on this point really quick, but I think the most dangerous thing that you can say for the progression of your company and, for sustainability as a whole is we've always done it this way. So, and that's why we continue to do it this way, is that's how it's always been done. So just being able to take a look in the mirror and be like, it's okay to make a change just because this is working or has worked. It's not going to maybe work forever. And I think that some of the best advice that I've kind of leaned on over the past year or two has been just to be authentic in your ask.
Mhm.
So if you don't know, you don't have to sit there and be like, oh, I'm good, we're green, we're doing it right. It's not going to help you. And there are so many amazing resources in the industry and just out there at our fingertips. And you can get on the literal internet and be like, where do I start? What do I do with this? And people are nice. They want to help you. So just be a kindergartner is what I like to think about, and just why, how, and just asking those questions on repeat, and taking bits where you can. That's going to help you grow the best. So I just think you have to be nosy, quite honestly.
Yeah, and maybe in this webinar, for instance, it's our minds are opening up so much, just having, the four of us here kind of talking about the practices that you're all taking. And this could be that first step for somebody too out there who's, just wants to learn more. They have a small company, they're starting the process. And now I think they've learned from this, start asking the questions. Open your mind up to it, to the possibility. So anything else? So we're about 5 minutes to the end here. And before we kind of close out this webinar, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience, or before we close this out? Any last
Stay
thoughts?
curious, for sure.
Yeah.
Stay curious. I think Sam's right. This is like a really important moment. I've focused my whole career on this work, and I've watched it die and come back with this evolving economy and world that we have. And it's been, to fight all along and see this resurgence. It's like a melting back into what feels good, actually. Like biophilia, all of this is like, stay curious and interested. I love this Rumi quote, I am wide awake, I cannot go back to sleep. Do not ignore the promptings to consider these things, because we are fighting for each other and our future generations, and this balance and beauty that we can enjoy together versus, continued turmoil and pain as this planet evolves with us. So stay curious, stay positive.
I love that. Thank you so much. And just so everybody knows, we did get some questions coming in. Everyone out there in the audience, I have them. I will pass them along, I promise. But as we kind of close out, I would like to just thank everybody for being here today, our panelists especially, but everybody who registered for this webinar. I'm already getting feedback that the three of you knocked it out of the park. People loved this. So this recording will be available within the next few days. And before I end this, I just want to say, if you want to know, more about Mortarr, what Mortarr's doing in sustainability, or what these other companies are doing too, come to mortarr.com, check it out. All three have a profile on the platform which shows off their products and their projects, and there's a message us feature on there as well. So if you have any questions, not only from this webinar, but just moving forward, I recommend heading over to the profile, send them a message. That would be great. But so thank you again, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of your week and have a wonderful weekend.
I have one last question. Can they get our contact info if they want it?
Yes, definitely.
Should we put that in the chat or something so everybody can see it?
We'll actually send it in the follow-up email. So,
Awesome.
So thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Happy Earth Day.
Thanks, guys. Happy Earth Day.